All right, so in this video, you will be learning exactly how to automate your onboarding process, right? I will be breaking down everything step by step, pretty much a full A to Z, and I'll be showing you what my personal onboarding process looks like at my own lead generation agency called salesway.io. And the reason why I made this video is because I know when I first started my business, after I landed my first client, I was kind of left hanging, kind of left questioning, now what, right? I made a few $1,000s, but what's the next step? And the way I went about doing that was I bought a bunch of different courses, and every single person told me to do something different, right? So some people told me to build this highly complex ClickFunnels funnel to funnel people through. Other people just said, send an email, just have a call, send a YouTube video, whatever that is. And over the last few months, as I signed more and more clients, I definitely played around with different onboarding processes. But at the end of the day, right, what I realized is the onboarding process is really not that complex, and you really shouldn't be overthinking this process because it's kind of the middle area between you collecting your first few $1,000s in the form of a setup fee and you delivering the service that they actually paid for. So in today's video, I'll be breaking down the exact A to Z. I'll be pulling back the curtains and showing you exactly what my personal onboarding process looks like. And it's something that you'd be able to apply into your own business as well. And realistically, building out this onboarding process should only take you a few hours, right? So if you're spending 3 or 4 days doing this, then you know something is wrong, because this exact process will probably take you maybe 3 or 4 hours max to actually build out for your own agency. And after that, it's a relatively automated process, and you'd be able to use the exact same process for every single client that you sign. So jumping right into it, this is exactly why you need a strong onboarding experience, because you made your first few bucks with your lead generation agency. That's amazing. But now what? And that's the exact same question that your new clients are asking themselves. They just paid you $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, and now they're wondering what that exact first step is. And with the purpose of the onboarding process, our goal is to answer this specific question so that they're not left in the dark. They're not left scratching their head, asking themselves, did I just get scammed? What's the next step? Will this person message me? Will this person communicate me? What does that process look like? And the client onboarding process is kind of that middle process, that gray area between you signing them as a client and delivering the exact service that they paid for. But the reason why having a strong and robust onboarding process is super important is because it kind of sets the tone for the relationship as a whole. Meaning, if you start off and your onboarding process is extremely sloppy, it takes you a really long time to get started, to send them a simple email, then that kind of sets the tone for the rest of the relationship. And in your client's head, they're probably left thinking, if this process, this client onboarding process is so sloppy, what about the next few months that I'm working with this person? Right? And there's a saying that goes, first impressions last, and it's really true, right? So obviously the first impression was probably that sales call. If you're taking your own sales calls for your own agency and they paid you thousands of dollars, it means that they trust what you have to sell. They trust that you are the vehicle that will allow them to book meetings and get more customers for their business. So you're already getting off on a good foot, and you kind of want to maintain that strong momentum headed into the service delivery aspect of the process. So first impressions last, and I want you to keep that in mind. Always keep that in mind. And the name of the game is communication. And starting with the client onboarding process, we want to showcase how strong and how great our client communication is. And the way by doing that is by doing all of these things immediately, right? The second they send you the money for the setup fee, just get started with the onboarding process right away and don't waste your time doing other things. So the goals of the client onboarding process, it might seem obvious, but I do wanted to put this out here just so that you understand why exactly you need a client onboarding process and what it's going to accomplish if you do this process correctly. So your number one goal of the client onboarding process is to have a clear and direct next step. Again, you're not keeping your client hanging. You're not leaving them in the dark. You're not letting them ask themselves, what is the next step after paying this person thousands of dollars? And essentially, you want to communicate and showcase how everything works as a process for your biz. When they work with you, when they pay you money, what is their next step and what is every step of that process and what does it look like? You also want to be gathering as much information as you possibly can regarding your client's business, because obviously if you're selling cold emails as a service, you will be helping your clients send emails on their behalf. And if you just don't understand how their business works, who they want to work with, how much money they make, what their typical sales process is, then obviously you're going to have a very challenging time writing your offer, building your leads list, writing the cold email copy, crafting the VSL. You're not going to be able to do any of these things if you don't have the right amount of information regarding your client's business. And the number one goal for your clients, obviously, is just understanding how it all works and that you could deliver the service that they paid for. Because at the end of the day, realistically, most clients, especially if you're working with B2B clients, they're very, very busy. And quite frankly, they don't really care about the specifics. They paid you because you have a solution. You can help them get more customers. You can help them fill their sales calendar. And that's the only thing that they need to know, that you can actually do that service that you just sold them, right? They don't really care about all of these gimmicks or these fancy things, building funnels, stuff like that. It doesn't really matter. They just want to know that you will be there and help them to achieve their goals of making more money. That's pretty much what it comes down to. So don't overcomplicate this process. So learn from my mistakes, right? The very first client that I signed last year in December 2022, the onboarding process was extremely sloppy because quite frankly, I didn't know what I was doing, right? I've never had a paid customer, never had a paid client. Obviously, this was the first guy. And he was kind of like the test dummy that kind of went through this onboarding process. And I kind of just went with the flow and figured that as time went on, after tweaking and optimizing the onboarding process, it would get better, right? And obviously, that's exactly what I did. I've worked with 50 plus clients at this point. I've ran through every single one of those 50 plus clients through the same onboarding process and have made numerous tweaks and numerous variations, making it better with each client that I work with. So looking back, some of my biggest mistakes, especially regarding my first client onboarding process, was obviously everything was manual. So it took a ton of time to send emails, add them into the Slack, stuff of that nature. And obviously this does not take that much time. It'll probably take you 5 minutes. But if your day is packed just like mine, I have meetings after meetings after meetings. I have to work with my team, different clients and stuff like that. And sometimes things can kind of slip between the cracks. And I don't necessarily have 5 to 10 minutes to actually stop and send them the email right away, right? And that's exactly what we want. We want to do this right away. We don't want to take 3 hours to send them a simple onboarding email. And the biggest mistake was my process was completely manual. And because everything was manual, sometimes the onboarding process was delayed. Some things took longer than it needed to be. My very first client, I think it took me 2 or 3 hours to get the onboarding email to them. And that's completely unacceptable. And on top of that, because everything was manual, I would happen to forget certain steps, right? Like maybe I'll send them the onboarding email, but I forget to add them to Slack. Or maybe I'll add them to the Slack and I forget to send them the onboarding form. Different things like that, because my day was so busy that sometimes things would just slip in through the cracks and I just didn't get them to the client in a very quick period of time. And that was one of the largest mistakes. And the final mistake that I made was, at least in the beginning, was I didn't get all the information I needed. Again, we are helping your clients book more meetings. You are able, for you to get a client, get to this process, the onboarding process, it means you probably landed clients for yourself by sending cold emails. But the reason why it works so effectively for you is because obviously this is your own business. You research your client. You know exactly what it is that you sell, and you kind of need to have that exact same framework, except now for your client's offer and for your client's business. You just have to understand these details. And if you're missing important things, if you're missing information, then you're setting up yourself for a really tough time working with this client. And finally, the largest mistake was spending too much time building fancy onboarding funnels when it was quite simply just not needed. Again, I bought this course and the guy told me to build a ClickFunnels onboarding process. And what I realized after working with so many clients is, again, right, they don't really care about these things. They just want to make sure that they're not getting scammed. They just want to make sure that you can actually deliver the service that you sold them. And that's kind of what it comes down to, right? And you don't really need all of these complex things. Obviously, if you have time, you could add funnels and things of that nature. But at the end of the day, fundamentally, you don't necessarily need any of those things. So jumping into the first step, so the second that your client pays you money, the second that Stripe invoice hits, what you should be doing is you should be sending them an onboarding email. And I, just right off the bat, I included a a copy of my own onboarding email, and this is kind of what that looks like. So the subject line is client company name times salesway.io. That's the name of my own agency. And I start off by saying, hey John, wanted to formally welcome you to salesway.io, sharing with you some tasks to work on as we get you fully onboarded. Number one, read and sign the consulting agreement. The agreement should have been sent to your email. Contact me or contact Jimmy if you have not received it. Sometimes the email bounces, things like that. And number two, fill out the new client onboarding form. And obviously there's a link to my Google Forms. And then finally, we want to know the ins and outs of you and your agency / online service business so we can then accelerate the process. So this is my own client onboarding email, and it's very straight, direct to the point, very zero fluff. It's basically just telling them, here are the 2 action steps. Make sure you sign the agreement. And once that is done, make sure you fill in the onboarding form with as much details as you possibly can so we can understand your business. So this is the onboarding email, and your goal should be to send this right away. The second that invoice hits, you should be sending this over to your clients. So that's what this process looks like. And obviously, once the onboarding form is completed, we will invite you to a Slack channel and set up the kickoff call where I communicate with every single one of my clients is through Slack. When they have questions, I have questions. When they just want to chat, when I'll give them campaign updates, I do it over Slack. So after this process, I will be adding them onto my Slack workspace where all the communication will take place. And in the very beginning, this email was completely manual. So the second I got the invoice, I would fire up Gmail or Outlook and I will write this email out and send them to them. And that's kind of what I mean by that manual process. This doesn't take a lot of time. It'll probably take you like 2 minutes. But if you are signing 3 or 4 clients a week, it becomes pretty tedious and you might just not have the time to do it, especially if you have back-to-back calls where your last call ended at the 58th minute of the hour and your next call is about to start in 2 minutes. Right? But you still want to get that onboarding email out. So what I have now is a completely automated process. I'm just going to share my screen to show you exactly what that kind of looks like. So what you're seeing now on this screen is Make.com. This is a tool that we use inside my own agency to automate certain processes, the really tedious stuff. And an alternative of this is Zapier. You might know of it, you might not. I personally use Make.com. It does the exact same thing. And basically what you're seeing is the workflow that we use at my own agency to automate this process of sending out that onboarding email. So the goal is the second the invoice hits, the agreement is signed, they will get this email right away without me actually having to sit there and type out that email. It will just happen automatically, meaning I won't run the risk of forgetting to send them this email, and I'll be able to get this email out to them within the first 5 minutes of the invoice being paid. So what you're seeing as the first step, and obviously you can go and set this up yourself, it's not that complex. It might look that way, but this will probably take you 30 minutes to just play around with. It's relatively simple. If you're using Zapier, the layout might look different, but the same idea would apply. So what we're doing inside my agency is obviously the invoice is taken care of through Stripe. That's our payment processor. But what we're doing with the agreements is we're using a tool called esignatures.io to send out the agreements. I think each agreement that we send out is like 90 cents or like $1, something like that. So it's relatively cost efficient. You could use DocuSign, you could use PandaDoc, you could use all of those things. I just personally use esignature.io. And what we're doing is the first step is the esignature.io and watch for the contract to be signed by the signer. So once the agreement, the contract is taken care of, the very first step is inside my own business's internal Discord group. So obviously with the clients, we communicate on Slack, but for my own team to manage my own business for project management, I use Discord where all my team members are. This is kind of just an alert that I send inside to my own internal Discord. You might not have this, especially if you're starting out in your business and you're doing everything you're pretty much doing everything yourself. You might not have this process, but obviously I have team members, and basically it pushes a notification over Discord where it sends a message inside an internal channel, basically saying another deal closed. Here's the name of the person. Here's the company name. They signed on the dotted line. Let's get ready to rock and roll. And this alerts my team members, basically letting them know, hey, we have another client, and is more of just a notification just so that they're aware of what's going on. That's the second step. The part where you will probably have inside your automated process, if you don't have a Discord, is the third step. which is it creates and sends a message into Microsoft 365 email. That's personally where I send all my emails. I use Outlook. And basically what we're seeing is we're taking the information the second people are signing these agreements, and we're sending this email right away. It's basically saying, hey John, wanted to formally welcome you. And obviously this is the email that I just shared with you in the presentation. I pasted the whole thing here. And the idea is this is entirely automated. So the second that signature hits on the agreement, this email gets signed to them, and then that's the next step. And then obviously it funnels back into my Discord again for my own team, basically letting my team members know, hey John just completed the onboarding form, he got this email, stuff like that. Here are the next steps, right? Create a private Slack channel, send a message, a welcome message in the Slack channel, invite them into the channel, and set up the onboarding / kickoff call with the actual client. And this is what I use. It's called Make.com. Again, you could do this with Zapier, and don't overcomplicate this process. But the main idea is this entire process is now completely automated inside of my agency. Okay, awesome. So now that you see how we automated the onboarding email aspect of things, the next step is actually collecting the information that you need in order to succeed in your relationship with your client. So personally, what I use inside my own agency is Google Forms. It's just a regular form that I send over to the client, basically asking them a series of questions to understand their business, right? And this is kind of what it looks like. I use Google Forms. You could pause the video and go onto Google Forms and build out this exact same process with these exact same questions. I personally found that this was really good. And this is one of the things that I tweaked the most as I sign more clients, is what type of information do I actually need from the client. And as I went through, working with different clients and realizing that I didn't have all the information I needed, I went back and tweaked this part of the process and added these questions into my onboarding form. So what it looks like is this is a Google Forms. This is what you're seeing right now. The first thing is obviously we're understanding what the email address looks like, the full name, the company website, pretty standard stuff. The first question we ask is, who do you help and what result can you get for them? Is there a specific time frame and how do you get these results? Please answer each of these questions in detail. The next question is, what is the best email to send the Slack channel invite to? Add as many as you need, because a lot of the clients, what you find is you might have sold to the direct decision maker, so the CEO or the founder, but they might have someone else on their team or a business partner who is also involved in this process. So you want to collect that information, and you can add all of those people into your Slack channel. So when you do ask questions, when you are talking with your clients over Slack, everyone on the team gets access to, see what basically you're saying. Third question is, who do you help and what results can you get them? Is there a specific time frame? So you're asking them basically with this question, what do you do? What exactly is your service and what is the expected result? If you've watched my offer video, then you understand that understanding the desired outcome of the offer is extremely important towards the success of cold emails. And this is kind of what you're asking. You're basically asking your clients, what is the desired result? If you're working with SEO agencies, what is the desired result of SEO? Is it getting more conversions? Is it building your brand and warming it up so that people find out about it? What does that look like as a tangible, specific desired outcome? You're asking that question. Next one is, who exactly is your target market? In other words, who would you like for us to send personalized messages to? So the purpose of this question is so that when you do go to build that leads list, you understand who it is that they're working with. Again, back to the example of the SEO agency. If you ask them, who do you work with? Who do you sell your SEO services to? And they say, let's say e-commerce brands. You want to understand, what does that look like? Any specific locations in e-commerce brands? Is it only Canada, only US, only UK? What do those companies look like? Are they big? Are they small? Is it sub 50 employee headcount, over 50, below 25? What does that look like? The specific people at those e-commerce brands, who are those people typically and what do they look like? What roles are they? Are they CEOs? Are they founders? Head of marketing? Head of sales? Who are those people? And more importantly, what industry are they? What does e-commerce mean, right? Are you working with apparel brands? Are you working with e-commerce brands as a whole? What does that specifically look like? And that's kind of the goal of this question. The next one is, so obviously my onboarding funnel is very specific because I am working with recruitment agencies. So helping these recruitment agencies find companies that are hiring and filling open roles and placing candidates in them. So my specific question was, are there companies you'd like for us to target hiring any specific roles? So what type of roles? Are they sales roles? Are they software development roles? Are they hiring executives? What does that look like? So that's a question I personally used inside my own agency. If you're selling to a different market, you will probably not have the same question. But if you are selling to recruitment agencies, I would strongly suggest you add this question as well. And obviously I have this question, please confirm that you provide as much information as you could. And it's kind of just a verbal confirmation just to basically tell, hey, this stuff is important. I know it will take some time to answer in detail, but have you given as much details as possible? And that's the goal of this form. Next one is, what exactly do you sell to your target market? Again, we are clarifying because there's a very strong chance that the people, when they go through this form, they'll answer your question, but they might not be in as much detail as you'd like. So we ask this question once again in a slightly worded different way, just to make sure we are getting all of those details in as much detail as we humanly can. Final question is, if you were prospecting for new clients, are there any questions you could think of that you would ask your prospect if you were to cold call them? And this question, I found it really effective because let's say I am selling SEO services and I was picking up the phone, I was dialing and I was calling, holding my phone backwards, but I was calling, cold calling these people. There would be some very specific questions I'd ask. For example, some of those questions might be, hey, are you currently doing SEO? Yes or no? If you are doing SEO, how are the results? Those are the type of questions that you want to know, because with those questions, you'd be able to understand your offer better, what makes a good customer for your clients, and what they're looking for as a qualifying question. After that, we want to understand what are some prospects, what are some problems of your ideal clients that you solve for them. If, again, you're selling SEO as a service, why would they want SEO? Is it because maybe they don't exist on Google right now? Is it because they just don't have that brand awareness? They have poor sales conversions from their websites. What are the problems and what does your service solve in relation to those problems? So we're trying to get that information. After that, we're moving on to more about results and case studies that we could potentially leverage as part of our cold email process. So please type out any results you've gotten for your clients. Have they profited from working with you? What niche are they? You want to ask for case studies and get in as much detail as you can so that when you are crafting these cold email copies, you're able to say, we recently worked with this company where we did X, Y, and Z. And because we're getting that information, we're now able to craft effective case studies. What is your most recent case study and what positive result did you achieve? So we're asking for the most recent case study. There's a very strong chance these clients that you're working with, they have multiple case studies and you just want to get that information basically. And as you can see from some of these questions, that basically asking a very similar thing just over and over and over again to clarify the information that they previously stated. And on the actual onboarding call, you'd be able to clarify with them. Do you offer any form of guarantee or risk reversal? This is a pretty straightforward question. You're finding that out so that we can leverage that as part of our cold email copy. A lot of clients, they won't have a guarantee or a risk reversal, and that's completely fine as well, right? We're just trying to find out if they have one, and if they do, what does that look like? And finally, I ask this question, what makes you unique and different from your competitors? Because almost every service, there's 1,000 competitors out there, but what makes you different? Anything unique? Do you go to school somewhere? Are you located in a specific location? What are some cool quirks about your business that other people cannot say they have, right? That other competitors may not necessarily have. And we're asking this question so that they could write that out. And finally, I like to ask this, if you could get one thing out of your working relationship with SalesWay.io, so my own agency, to make this a smashing success for you, what exactly would that be and what does that look like? So this way we are establishing what their expectations are. We're finding out what the success looked like for them. And we're getting that written out so that after, as we are going through and reading through these answers, reading this form, I could take the priorities and apply that into the service delivery to ensure that my clients are actually happy with what they're paying me for, to ensure that my service is top tier, and to ensure that not only will they continue working with me month after month after month, paying me thousands of dollars, but they'll be able to eventually refer me to other clients in their network, and I'll be able to scale without actually sending cold emails myself through word of mouth and referrals. So this is my onboarding form. I refined this numerous times, and you probably want to do the same thing inside your agency, but if you are completely beginning, you're starting from scratch and you're building out this onboarding process for yourself, I want you to pause this video and go through each of these questions and just kind of take them and add them into your own business. And, feel free to be creative, play around with different things, and ask different types of questions that you feel like would be relevant for you and your clients. Now, the third step is obviously the onboarding call. So after the form is signed, after all of this stuff, and you have the answers from the onboarding form, you obviously want to set up a 1-hour call. I personally do 1-hour calls with my clients within the first 48 to 72 hours to just talk with them, establish expectations, show that you are there for them, and we'll take these calls and to run through some of the answers, because you might have some questions still after reading through the form. A lot of people, they might not answer in as much detail as you'd like, or they might read the question wrong and answer a different question, something like that. And you want to clarify that on the onboarding call. The way I run my own onboarding calls is the first step is obviously the agenda. I'm meeting their team. If they have other people other than the person I sold to, I like to meet them, find out what they do, what their role is in terms of the process, in terms of generating sales for my client's business. What does that look like and who they are? I like to reintroduce myself. Hey, I'm Jimmy. I'm the founder of SalesRate.io. What we do is XYZ. I want to state that again because the other people on the call, they might not know who we are specifically and what that looks like. And then we jump right into it, right? So we're finding these questions that we asked on the onboarding form, because these are just really crucial pieces of information. So we want to know, what is it do they sell? What is their offer? What is the desired end result of their product or service? What is the pricing structure and how do they get paid? This is all in relation to the client's business and what it is that they sell. After that, I'd like to learn who it is that they sell to in terms of industries, geographical areas, company headcount, and typical roles of decision makers, so that we are able to build that leads list when we are scraping, and so that when we eventually send cold emails, we're able to target the right people for our client. After that, again, I like to define the expectations and see what success looks like for them, right? So I like to establish how communication will work. Will we have weekly calls, bi-weekly check-in calls, monthly check-in calls? What does that typically look like? I recommend as a beginner, I would do weekly check-in calls. And as you become very proficient and you get more clients, I would do bi-weekly calls. I personally do bi-weekly calls in my own agency. But in the beginning, I would recommend weekly calls. I want to understand what payments look like. Are we billing at the end of every week, every bi-weekly? What does that look like? And what constitutes as a qualified call? So obviously, if you're selling performance model, so the setup fee plus pay per qualified call, there's a bit of a gray area in terms of what qualified looks like. So you want to talk about that with your client and establish what that looks like. What I like to do is I always tell all my clients to record the calls, the sales calls. And if they are unqualified, make sure you send those recordings to me. I'll take a look and see. I like to work on a trust basis with my clients. So I don't typically find a lot of clients trying to lie to me or stuff like that. And because we're asking them to record the calls, in the scenario that people no-show on the calls, which will happen, then it'll be very evident that they just no-showed. But I typically just get all my clients to record all their Zoom calls, all their sales conversations, just so that we have the record straight. And in the case where there's some form of dispute in terms of what is qualified and what is not, some form of disagreement about that, it's very easy to identify. And finally, we want to understand, what do they have set up? Do they have a Calendly right now? Do they have a CRM right now? Do they have existing domains and email accounts? If they do, what does that look like? Because we might not want to reset up another Calendly if they already have one. But if they don't have a Calendly or a calendar software, then we'll obviously have to go and create one for our own clients. So we want to ask this question just to find out. And you also, throughout this onboarding call, you also want to run over the Google Forms that your client filled out. You want to run through those answers directly in front of them. I would recommend just pulling out the answers directly on your screen and screen sharing that over a Zoom or a Google Meets call on your onboarding call with your client, and just running through each of them, reading the answers back to them and clarifying wherever you need more clarification. And I personally run over the Google Forms, and I use the following Notion to keep track of key information with my clients. So what you're seeing right now is a Notion where I have some of these onboarding questions. And as I'm running through the onboarding call with my clients, I also pull up this Notion and fill in the answers to some of these questions. I personally just do this so I could document it, because I find Google Forms, although it is really good for getting answers, it it's a little bit challenging in terms of record keeping. You could do this on Google Docs. You could use another form of note-taking software, but this is more so internally for myself and for my own team, so that down the line, let's say 3 weeks from now, when I'm building out another variation of the campaign or writing a different angle, I'm able to go and take an easy look and see what it is that they sell. If I'm forgetting certain information, I'm able to do that. You could use Google Docs, but I personally find Notion to be the most effective. I share this with the client as well, so that they are able to see what we're working on in terms of the answers if they find it incorrect. And basically what I'm doing is, as I am running through those Google form answers, I plug the answers into some of these questions, right? Just again, right, for my own personal note-taking, documentation, that type of thing. So I asked them, please describe your business, what service you offer, who do you do this for, what industries are you serving, any specific locations, and employee headcount, some basic information. Who do you typically chat with when reaching out to potential new clients? So who are those typical decision makers? How many clients do you have right now? And what are those case studies? Do you have a guarantee? What makes you unique from your competitors in your own words? And what's your process from the second you sign a client? Walk me through that so I could clearly understand what your sales process looks like, and I could convey that as part of the cold emails. And even for my own information purposes, I'm able to just understand what specifically that looks like and where my services, my cold email services, plug into their current sales process. And what is your price of service and scope of work? How much do you typically charge? If you're doing rev share, what does that look like? How often do you get paid? And this is just some of the information that I'm getting. Some of these questions overlap with the onboarding questions from the Google Forms. Some of them do not. For example, the price of service and scope of work. What's the process? Those questions are not in the Google Forms, but there's still important things that you want to understand about your client. And this is exactly why I create this Notion. And that's kind of what that looks like. So this is pretty much my entire process, my own client onboarding process that I follow and use whenever I sign new clients at SalesRate.io, my own lead generation agency. Feel free to copy everything that you see here and do it for your own business. I just find this to be the most effective. And right after this onboarding call, I just get straight to work. I buy all the domains, I buy all the email accounts, set up a calendar if needed, and I do all of that stuff. So this is what that client onboarding process, and the way I have it structured here is it's just what works fundamentally. There's not a lot of fluff. It's very clear. And doing this process correctly, you're showcasing that you have strong communication. You want to learn more about your clients, and you're setting them up for success. So hope you found this video valuable. If you have, please subscribe. Please like this video. If you have any questions, DM me on Instagram, right? I put a link to my calendar down below if you want to chat about how you can personally build your own lead generation agency and go from $0 to $10,000 a month in the next 90 days. I put my calendar in the comments in the description below, and follow me on Instagram, right? It's JimmyFung_, where I just post more content on a day-to-day basis. You see what my day-to-day looks like. I post different business insights regarding the lead generation agency model, different clips, shorts, and stuff like that. But hope you found this video valuable, and see you in the next one. Bye-bye.